Welcome everybody. Marcel Irnie, Irnieracing News, Canadian journalist. Today we're talking about the petition signed by MP Leslyn Lewis calling for the Canada to leave the UN and the WHO and essentially not get involved with the pandemic treaty from the World Health Organization, where they will have the ability to inflict more damage than they did during COVIDism. We already know how Canada and the US and many countries of the world took what the WHO said, their recommendations, to heart. We all know Google, YouTube censorship is based, along with Facebook and the previous Twitter, it was all based, their censorship, on what the WHO said, their recommendations. The local health authority recommendations were all based on the WHO's recommendations. And we all know their recommendations were not for the benefit of any citizens, but the benefit for their control measures. And when I came across a story on True North, it's really sad to see, because True North and Rebel News, I used to, enjoy them telling the truth on matters. But now I see True North and Rebel News going further and further into the black. Essentially, like how everyone calls it, they don't actually work for the people. It's only at certain times they'll tell the truth, and other times they're just not pushing they're pushing some kind of agenda on the back end. Jumping over to CBC News Politics, our communist-owned news network, Trudeau's news network. They're doing the same story that True North is doing, just in a larger degree. And this was from September 8th, 2023. Leslyn Lewis claims WHO pandemic pact a step toward global government. And what they do in this article is they just bash everything as a conspiracy theory. And it's like calling you a racist to shut the conversation up. But what you'll notice in the CBC article is they bash it. Oh, this is completely wild. This is bonkers. But then they would not ever add any input. There's no actual information to learn about the treaty. I'll read just a little paragraphs here and there to give you an outlier. Conservative leadership hopeful Leslyn Lewis has outlined a frightening scenario. If Canada signs an international pandemic treaty, Canadians' travel and medication choices could be restricted, the Constitution could be suspended, and it could all pave the way for a global government. Lewis made those claims in a half-hour-long live event broadcast on Facebook, Twitter, Wednesday night. They build an argument she has already made about the dangers involved in signing the WHO Pandemic Response Treaty. And then CBC goes, several legal experts say her claims are completely untrue. And, there should be some quotes around that. Several legal experts. I mean, their inner posse, right? And then they throw in this Professor Stephen Hoffman, a professor in global health law and political science at York University. And if anybody's been paying attention during the last 3-4 years, we know the universities are owned. We know they're actually doing ill-gotten bad shit going on in the British Columbia universities. They are involved. They are totally complicit with COVIDism, guys. We've seen it. We've seen the funding. We've seen 10 grand times 100 times going to these universities. We've seen the propaganda being paid to social media people to push these agendas. So listening to somebody at a university is like listening to your health officials. They're all a bunch of liars. They're all a bunch of crazy assholes trying to take us down, make us sick. Back to the CBC story, quote from this expert. And the bottom line is that her claims are so far from the truth that it's actually hard to know where to begin, said Professor Kelly Lee, Canada Research Chair in Global Health Governance at Simon Fraser University. So it's kind of like saying, oh, you're a racist, so I'm not going to explain what you're doing wrong because you're just way too whack for me to explain anything, right? Avoiding the subject again. So as I go through the article, they just, so many freaking words. What the treaty will and won't do. What Leslyn Lewis claims. On and on and on. And there's that asshole there. Tedros Adhanom, whatever, asshole Director General of the WHO. And on. It erodes trust in our institutions. So Lewis had warned the treaty would undermine democracy by taking power away from the Canadian politicians. Caulfield said Lewis is the one causing damage with her unsupported claims. Again, no specifics. So in this whole article from CBC, where is the link to the petition? So people are reading this. If they want to go and read the petition, why is there not a single link to it? They don't even mention the name of the freaking petition. What number is it? E46 what? There's a reason for that, right? They don't want you to go and sign it. So now back to my original point about controlled opposition. Here we have True North. You know, they've done some fantastic news during the Freedom Convoy, getting the stories out. But what they were doing is building their brand. They're building their audience. They're gaining your trust. And once they have your trust, whoever owns them can institute slowly and methodically their own course, their own agenda, right? So why does True North, in their entire article, which is, you know, kind of copying, there's no information about the pandemic treaty, what the pandemic treaty wants to do. There's no details. It's all about the bad-mouthing of the Conservative. Liberal MP Ryan Turnbull accused the Conservatives of being conspiratorial over Lewis' support for the petition. Quote, "It's astonishing how the Conservative Party has become a haven for conspiracy theorists and extremists," he said. The Conservative Party did not respond to a request for comment from True North. And again, there's no comment section for anybody to type in, what is the petition? Why would True North not include a link? This is very strange, right? Very strange. Oh wait, maybe here it is. The petition initiated by Burnaby, BC resident Doug Porter and sponsored by Lewis has amassed over 66,000 signatures since it opened in October. The deadline to sign is at 4623 it should go to. Okay, at least they have the link in there. I missed it, sorry guys. Canada's membership in UN and its subsidiary World Health Organization poses negative consequences on the people of Canada far outweighing any benefit. Canada's agreement to participate in the UN WHO Agenda 2030 undermines national sovereignty and personal autonomy. Agenda 2030 and its operational sustainable development goals, comprehensive sexuality education, UN judicial review, international health regulations, and One Health or similar programs are being rapidly implemented absent the awareness and consent of the people or their elected representatives. So currently they're at 73,962 signatures. You know, 16,800 Alberta, 14 BC, 25,000 Ontario, 59 Quebec. So if you run over to the World Health Organization website, you can read a million words about this. The World Together, the intergovernmental negotiating body to draft and negotiate a WHO convention, agreement, or other international instrument on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Then you do a search about, you know, the pandemic treaty and our sovereignty, and you're going to come across the fact checkers. And this is one of your first clues about the lies being instilled, because we all know the fact checkers pushed an agenda all through COVIDism with complete lies. Like fact checkers became a complete fact-checking joke, right? Of course, the title is The WHO Pandemic Treaty Draft Reaffirms Nation Sovereignty to Dictate Health Policy. I quote from the fact check. "This is a once-in-a-generation chance to fix some of the big weaknesses that we saw during C-19. The Suri Moon, co-director of the Global Health Center at the Geneva Graduate Institute in Switzerland, told Nature, it could make a tremendous difference for the next pandemic," she has added. Yeah, they're already planning it. As we explained in 2022, the WHO has no authority to dictate U.S. health policy or to interfere in any nation's sovereignty. Neither the accord nor amendments proposed to the legally binding agreement that defines countries' rights and obligations during health emergencies known as the IHR would give the WHO control over how the U.S. governs domestic health policies. Yet once again, conservatives are falsely claiming the agreement will do exactly that, while also giving the wrong impression that it is about to be ratified. And on and on and on. You know how fact checkers work. They try to get you with double talk, double speak, nonstop. Their resources is from the WHO. The resources from the WHO. The resources from Reuters. They're from WHO, from DevEx, from factchecker.org. I mean, they're New Yorker. Their resources are themselves. What a bunch of malarkey, right? So, you know, right there, if you know fact checkers is telling you one thing, you know you should look into it further and think about the opposite, right? All right, and back over to True North here. A spokesperson for Minister Justin Trudeau said Lewis' backing of the petition prompts several questions. Make no mistake, when someone posts a petition, it's because they agree with it. What it is about, see, they're trying to say it's bad that she agrees with it. What is it about the UN that conservatives don't like? Trudeau's press secretary Mohammed Hussein said in a statement, according to the Globe and Mail, it is the work they do for children around the world. Yeah, child slavery, right? It is their programs to support women's rights and human rights. Yeah, like forcing us to go against the Nuremberg Code, taking away our medical autonomy, forcing us into camps. Yeah, the UN is doing awesome. Supporting child slavery, sex trafficking, war, proxy wars. Should I go on what the UN is doing? They voted against having an investigation into the pipeline bombing in the Baltic Sea. They voted against an investigation. No, we don't want an investigation into Nord Stream pipelines being blown up. You know, Russia, China, a few other countries all, of course, voted for an investigation. They all want an investigation. The UN votes against it. Like, the 95% of those fucking owned bitches. We all know we don't want to be involved in any of this stuff. And there are crimes. I mean, look at the Epstein right now. We got the names coming out of Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, a bunch of Bills on the sex island. And of course, none of these Democrats are thinking, he committed suicide. Epstein committed suicide under federal watch, under federal protection. Yeah, sure he did. Because so many people want to protect themselves. They've all been involved. So clearly he would have been assassinated. It's like the most likely outcome. We all understand the human being and race self-protectionism. So, yeah, here you have the story on True North, similar to the CBC, not giving any actual opinion about the WHO pandemic treaty. One of the reasons I stopped listening to True North and Rebel News is when I realized that they wouldn't even share my own story about public interest versus Conrad Herbs, who violated my charter rights. And Western Standard did an article on it. And the Propaganda did an article on it with Castanet Media. But True North, I contacted them several times. They came back at me, we'll look into it. And they're like, no, we don't want to do a story. We don't want to do a publishing that I won in court about them attacking my charter rights, about how the judge threw out his police officer suing me over my right to filming in public, my right to peaceful assembly. It just seems so obvious that they don't want to promote any of that stuff, that the citizens fighting back and winning, and they have a right to do what they're doing. We're protected by our charter rights and freedoms. So Rebel News refused to share my story in any capacity, from the initial videos to what happened during the Freedom Convoy beginning on January 29, 2022, and they wouldn't discuss the fact how I won in court, and they wouldn't discuss how the small claims court went when Herbs sued me in civil court and lost, and the judge threw it out. They wouldn't talk about any of these subjects whatsoever. And so, yeah, I did a quick search and RCMP sues Marcel Irnie. And here is Western Standard did an article. BC court dismisses Kelowna RCMP officer's case against independent journalist, right? And on and on and on. The BC Claims Court has dismissed a defamation lawsuit Kelowna RCMP Constable Conrad Herbs initiated against independent journalist Marcel Irnie. Irnie posted the videos of their interaction between the two of them, who was trying to get him to move his RV from in front of Kelowna City Hall after it had been parked there for most of the day. This was after a large freedom rally in Stewart Park. Irnie said Herbs ought to have known that you can't sue somebody for libel and slander in small claims provincial court. End quote. When Herbs knocked on his door after a freedom rally, he asked for his identification. He responded by saying he did not need to provide ID. Anyways, guys, you can go and read that article for yourself. In the end, Irnie concluded by saying that he did not want to back down. Quote, "You have to stand up for public interest," he said. Quote, "I have to stand up for all independent journalists because we can't be silenced." Herbs could not be reached for comment in this time. So anyways, here's a story like that, right? So why would Rebel News and True North, they got my emails, they responded to me, and then they're like, no, we're not interested in your story. It's just a freaking story. And if you do a search, you'll see like the propaganda media, which is like Castanet does a story, and then they'll have like 30 sub-websites that do the story. Here's NS News, Kelowna Cops lawsuit against protester tossed by judge. There's Coastal Reporter, Kelowna's Cops lawsuit against protester tossed by judge, right? Like, here's one from Delta Optimist, Kelowna's cop lawsuit tossed. They just repeat themselves, and this is the mainstream media even doing this. BC mounted suit against anti-COVID mandate protests over YouTube videos on News West Record. And it goes on and on and on, right? Here's PQ News Magazine, Kelowna's cops lawsuit against protester tossed. It's just a repeat, and this is what they do. They just take over your search by repeat. Even Infotel did a story on it, but Rebel News would not do a win for the civilians, for the public interest. This was the Infotel News one, right? Oh, this is a really funny part. In Herb's cease and desist lawsuit, he wrote this in his actual lawsuit. As you have received monetary compensation for the unauthorized use, misuse, abuse, and proliferation of my name and image without consent, I am seeking remuneration for this misuse. I am also seeking compensatory damage for irreparable harm caused by your malicious, harassing, slanderous, and libelous continuous acts. This is Herb's lawsuit, right? His handwritten lawsuit that he copy-pasted from the internet. Irnie says his YouTube channel isn't monetized, but he did make $1.46 from the online platform Rumble in February. Anyways, that was a good little bit. And then they linked the video and stuff, right? Okay, so back to the main story. So if you didn't know the name of the petition and you start searching for who pandemic treaty petitions, it comes up with this one in the UK. 156,000 signatures. The petition's closed now. This was like a while back. We got May 27th, 2022. It was closed on November 17th, 2022. And the petition was, we want the government to commit to not signing any international treaty on pandemic prevention preparedness established by the World Health Organization unless it is approved through a public referendum. The public needs to be 100% involved in the process. The WHO is currently preparing an international agreement on pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. We believe the public must be furnished with the full ramifications of what and how any pandemic treaty could affect them and be given a public vote on whether UK should sign up before the UK government signs up to this. And of course, the government responds to protect lives, the economy, and future generations of future pandemics. The UK government supports a new legally binding instrument to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. We could read the full response, but it just goes into nonsense. The C-19 has demonstrated that no one is safe until we are all safe, like propaganda, right? And that effective global cooperation is needed to better protect the UK and other countries around the world from the detrimental health, social impact, blah, 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 blah. And of course, they have this giant answer that nobody wants to read. Now let's go check out the one in Canada. If you search for petitions in the House of Commons about the WHO pandemic treaty, this one comes up, E4040. And when was this one done? It's similar. We want the government to commit to not signing the WHO. And we believe the public must be furnished with full It's the same thing as the UK one. Too many decisions have been made over the past 30 months regarding C-19 response with no interaction or constitution with Canadian citizens. One side of the issue has been suppressed on purpose, and decisions have been made which have been detrimental to our health and well-being with no debate. No, debate is not allowed. We do not believe the Liberal government has our best interests in mind. So this one was back in June 15th, 2022 and closed August 14th, 2022. And the government, of course, the response by the ministry is again bullshit. Protecting the health and safety of all Canadians is the top priority of the Canadian government. C-19 has demonstrated the need to take bold action to ensure that we are better prepared for the next blah, 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 which is why Canada is working closely with international partners, including the WHO and the Pan-American Health Organization, blah, blah, right? And it just goes on. So they bullshit response. And when I continue my searches under House of Parliament or House of Commons, there's another one, E4401, with their government response, of course, which was April 20th, 2023 to May 20th. And this one was also signed, sponsored by Leslyn Lewis, with 18,973 signatures. And it was petition to the government. Parliament has neither discussed nor debated Canada's participation in the WHO and blah, 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 the pandemic treaty. So it's a similar thing, guys. I never even heard of this back then, though, right? And, of course, the same government bullshit response from Minister of Health, Honorable Mark Holland, protecting the health and blah, blah, blah of all Canadians. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And on to the final, guys. This is the one that's open, e4623, Foreign Affairs. Go find it. You can just search e4623, and it'll pop up. And let's get Agenda 2030. It ends February 7th. Let's go show them their bullshit on the CBC, and along with the controlled media, probably opposition, such as True North and Rebel News. Let's show them up and get this thing signed. Let's get this to be 200,000 plus signatures, guys. And we're still waiting on now the 54 days since the last petition about the non-confidence vote for Trudeau. We're waiting for that, so we have another 40 days to go on hearing about that, so we'll stay tuned on that as well, guys. This is Irnieracing News, Canadian journalist, reporting January 7th, 2023, or 2024, sorry, my voice is gone. I got sick, unfortunately, here. We're in Vegas right now, heading down to Lake Havasu next. So have a good one, guys. Yeah. Cheers.